Catan expansion Cities and Knights is one of the world's most popular board games. But what you might not know is that there are more than 30 different strategies to win the game. So I've talked to the #1 ranked player in the world and narrowed it down to the 9 best Cities and Knights strategies you need to know. Let's kick things off with ore, wheat, paper, cloth. The resources most players look for are ore and wheat, because if there's 2 things that are important in Cities and Knights, they're commodity production and cities. In order to get as much commodity production as possible, you need more cities, which explains the ore and wheat. And paper and cloth are the best commodities in the game. The main early goals of the strategy are upgrading the science and trade path of the city calendar with the paper and cloth cards, as well as building that second city. The level 3 science upgrade called Aqueduct is a priority, but so is of course defending your city against the barbarians. The strategy is powerful as well as flexible, and it has a good shot at both the science and the trade metropolis. It gains many other points through various progress cards it picks up with strong commodity gain. So common pitfalls of this setup are looking too strong when you get the Aqueduct, as well as not being specialized enough for a metro. Okay, number two. The second strategy on our list is the Twin Tower strategy. Your main early goal with this setup is building a second city as fast as possible. You essentially use the same resources as many other strategies like ore, wheat, paper, cloth, but then in reverse. Your city is on ore and wheat, and your settlement is actually on the spot where you want your city to be in. That doesn't sound great, but because of this, the Twin Tower strategy focuses on the city first and on commodities later, while most other great strategies focus on commodities first. Its biggest power is good ore and wheat production, and the potential for commodity production once the second city has been built. A good trick is to build the second city right before the barbarians arrive, to make your opponents lose their cities. However, building a second city is easier said than done, and a slow start will lead to many disadvantages in commodity production and your ability to claim a metropolis. This setup relies on strong ore and wheat to build cities fast, but there's many winning setups that have a totally different approach. An example would be port strategies. So that would be number 3. The best port strategies in Cities and Knights revolve around the brick and the wheat port. The main reason for it is that cities produce 2 bricks and 2 wheats, but only 1 resource with sheep, wood and ore. It creates more fuel for the brick and wheat ports and less for the others. Port strategies have less power than ore, wheat, paper, cloth, but they're incredibly flexible. This flexibility allows their users to get the Aqueduct fast, defend against barbarians reliably, and build missing level 1 city calendar upgrades much faster than many other setups. The biggest downside is you need a lot of cards. For this reason, 7s are dangerous, but for this problem, city walls are a great solution. Overall, port strategies are easy to play and quite fun, so really recommend it. However, if you don't enjoy easy but you love fun, I try the Aqueduct Gambit. This tactic is all about letting your own city be destroyed in order to get the Aqueduct. It sounds risky, but hear me out. Aqueduct is super powerful, as it can get you up to 30 resources in a single game. By trading the resources you need for a barbarian defense away, or paper and other cards you can turn into paper, you can get the Aqueduct before the barbarians reach the shore for the first time. You use the Aqueduct to rebuild your city, and eventually the science metropolis as well. Well, that's the theory. In practice, I've seen it fail many times, even after getting the Aqueduct, because you need good ore and wheat as well to rebuild your city. But that's not all, because you must also do it with limited numbers, because Aqueduct is much less effective if you have 6 or more numbers. However, the Aqueduct Gambit is still quite strong, and if you can win with it, it's a victory for the ages. Despite the power of the Aqueduct, there's actually a lot of debate whether the science or trade path is the best to upgrade. If you believe in the trade path, the ore, wheat, cloth strategy is something for you. The setup primarily focuses on the cloth production over the coin production, because cloth is simply much stronger. You really want multiple hexes produced in cloth when going for ore, wheat, cloth. The setup is really good. You can defend easily, you have access to the least competitive metros, and you can city up fast. The main downsides, however, are a difficult path to get Aqueduct and a loss of mobility because of the lack of wood and brick. But the many progress cards from the trade path allow for great flexibility to cover up for both. With that being said, in Cities and Knights you don't always get to choose your favorite strategy, so to win with the best of them, you sometimes need to go wheatless. Playing without wheat isn't easy, but when you do it well, it can be really powerful. The tip is to select these setups when they also prevent your opponents from selecting great setups too, by blocking their best city spots. The setup works the best with fantastic commodity production and a reliable plan to defend against the barbarians. A wheatless strategy that relies on the paper science Aqueduct path is much better than the one that relies on cloth and the trade path. The biggest reason for that is the ability of the Aqueduct to consistently replace the lack of wheat. When you play without wheat, it's tough to build your second city and it's expensive to keep activating those knights. But did you know that you can actually win with longest road strategies in cities and knights as well? Well, it's true. In fact, there's two strategies that work. First is the city plus road setup, in which you start on everything except sheep and cloth. The second is the expansion strategy, in which you focus on building good settlements as fast as possible. It only works if there's not that many commodities on the board, you have great production and there's many open spots to build into. However, it's key to build your first expansion quite fast. With these road setups, commodity production is a little bit less of a priority, but you want to get at least a level 1 upgrade for both science and trade early on. Although it doesn't help, it's not a big problem to lose your city when playing the expansion strategy. Your focus should be on settlement spots, production and the longest road. A bonus tip is to focus on upgrading your knights and taking the Defender of Catan points, to compensate for the lack of points from metros. My personal favorite strategy is the ore wheat paper setup. This setup is really a game saver for first position, because when the desert hex is in the second ring, there's less space available and you're often forced to build your city on the coast. Because you don't have any brick, sheep or cloth, you lack some mobility and flexibility. I've seen many players solve this issue with the use of a wood board. The obvious advantage is a quick path to the aqueduct, as well as the resources needed to city up quickly. It's a bit tougher to defend against the barbarians because you don't produce any sheep. But it's a fairly efficient strategy that can play for 2 metros if you city up quickly with the ore and wheat. From the strategy so far you might get the idea that ore is irreplaceable, but that's not totally true. In fact, the number 1 ranked cities and knights player rather plays without ore than without wheat. Playing without ore works better with paper than cloth, because you can get the aqueduct faster, which will help you produce the ores to build a second city. In fact, this is also the type of setup you can go for the aqueduct gambit with. But knowing a strategy is one thing. If you truly want to excel at this game, I recommend watching one of these 2 videos about cities and knights next.